претензий тех или иных сторон к реализации проектов. Главное, чтобы не было разных трактовок законодательства, и очень важно обеспечить прозрачность и стабильность государственного регулирования, в том числе решений, которые могут серьезно повлиять на экономику проекта. Вот, говоря о последних событиях, последних случаях, вот эта известная ситуация с механизмом ГЧП в Башкирии, важно сделать так, чтобы, в принципе, невозможны были такие случаи, когда происходит такое неочевидная трактовка законодательства. Ну, я думаю, что и башкирские случаи тоже в итоге не составят угрозы для инвесторов в проекты ГЧП по всей стране. Третье – это важно совершенствовать механизмы привлечения финансирования, сделав возможным создание так называемого пула инвесторов, пула спонсоров инвестиционных проектов. Это могут быть и федеральные власти, и региональные власти, инфраструктурные, частные компании, пользователи, конечные потребители услуг инфраструктурных проектов. И здесь участие федерального правительства может идти как в форме капитальных грантов, платежей за доступность, растянутых во времени. И, конечно же, важный инструмент – это предоставление государственных гарантий для качественного снижения риска по привлекаемому частному ресурсу, что будет также удешевлять стоимость финансирования. Ну и четвертое направление – это то, что накоплен ряд проблем с точки зрения законодательного обеспечения процесса инвестиций в инфраструктуру, поэтому здесь будем разрабатывать специальную дорожную карту, которая будет направлена на снижение рисков для участников процесса и снижение издержек, которые не являются необходимыми при реализации проектов. Но в целом, говоря об инвестициях в инфраструктуру, важно, конечно, говорить не только о количественных показателях, но и качественных показателях, о повышении эффективности. И здесь важно понимать, что грамотное планирование и взаимовязка реализуемых проектов является результатом максимально положительного эффекта на экономический рост и на развитие экономики. Важно максимально использовать так называемые сетевые эффекты. У нас до сих пор по многим проектам сетевые эффекты реализованы не полностью. Вот, и сегодня тоже, я думаю, поговорим о строительстве новых веток высокоскоростных железнодорожных магистралей. Однако пока, если посмотреть, например, на тот же уже построенную ветку Москва-Санкт-Петербург, можно сказать, что потенциал этой построенной дороги реализован до сих пор не полностью. Вот недавно был в Великом Новгороде, и, например, РЖД до сих пор не смог реализовать единый билет из Москвы до Новгорода с пересадкой на станции Чудово. То есть дополнительная нагрузка, которая могла бы лечь на базовую магистраль высокоскоростную, она пока не реализована, и те регионы, которые находятся по пути следования поезда, вовлечены не полностью. Если говорить о других ветках, то такие сетевые эффекты и вот эта вот взаимосвязь регионов с крупными агломерациями нужно продумывать сразу на стартовом этапе. Второй момент – это, конечно же, расходы на содержание. Вся эта программа должна вести к тому, что и себестоимость строительства, и себестоимость содержания за счет привлечения частного капитала, то, что частный капитал будет на себя брать риски, связанные с этими издержками, эти расходы должны сокращаться. И мы видим по разным странам, даже такие страны, например, как Дания, здесь активный переход на принципы ГЧП в дорожном строительстве позволили снизить расходы на 10-20% на содержание дорог. В нашем случае, понятный эффект может быть больше. Но главное то, что программа должна обеспечить за предстоящие, я думаю, 5-10 лет, это сделать качественный рывок вперед с точки зрения инфраструктуры, который будет позволять обеспечивать высокое качество жизни для населения, это с одной стороны, с другой стороны, обеспечивать возможность реализации большего количества инвестиционных проектов, и это все вместе будет способствовать более высоким темпам экономического роста. Спасибо.
Спасибо, Максим Станиславович.
Thank you, Maxim Stanislavovich. Thank you for such a report, and I've remembered while listening to you. Is there a high-speed line between Moscow and St. Petersburg, which existed for a long time, realized the full potential? And what do you think about the other high-speed lines? What the other perspectives for this high-speed line, and this line will influence other lines, I mean Moscow-Kazan, and other perspectives which should exist in other regions. And for economy of other regions and life of citizens. In order to understand this, we needn't talk about Moskva-Kazan, but we need to consider the example about the Chinese lines. And Moskva-Kazan will be a small part. When we talk about the complexes and when we plan such complexes, we need to understand at the early stage how we develop these regions where we need cargo transportation, not only to have passenger transportation, but also goods transportation. And Moskva-Kazan will be a small project, small part of this large construction. And we need to think about the potential of the global transportation line. Does this microphone work? Do you hear me? Let's discuss the potential of the big line. Now, Alexander, Mr. Misharin will make a report. Please tell us, of course we understand that High Lines is a high kind of drive for the development of the economy, and this will influence upon the region and upon the economy of regions. What's their position and what problems do we have and what solutions of this problem can be suggest? Thank you very much. Thank you, dear colleagues, for letting me to make such a report to speak at INNOPROM at this plenary session, which is very important, which is called Cooperation in the Industrial Efficiency. And I would like to tell you that Russian railway lines actively involved in development of infrastructure, and now we have more than 80% of good transportations from the whole volume and 40% of the passenger traffic. And that's why we have quite a difficult task for us, and this is a task which has three tendencies. The first one is to supply the economy of the country we live in, and here we could see the change of transportation lines and directions of cargo transportations, and we are oriented for transportations of such goods as coal. For example, we have increase of transportation in this direction, and the middle average of the line which we have is more than 1,000 kilometers. Right now we have the maximum volumes of cargo transportation to the Far East, which did not exist even the USSR, and other directions, including Baltic Sea and the Black Sea as well. The second tendency is as follows. We have changed quite greatly their conditions, and their goods turnover between Europe and Asia has increased also. And I would like to mention some figures. For example, in tons, the turnover of goods increased by 10%, and in manufacturing it is 1.5 times. And now we have the equal transportations from China to Europe and from Europe to China. And the third tendency is as follows. We have walked in such a direction that to develop the territories, just to increase the speeds and to receive some effects such as the increase in agglomerations, and this is the purpose of all countries. And we are doing a lot in these connections. So we have flexible policy, and for the late 3 years, Russian railways place for 30 billion projects to invest into Transsib and BAM railways. This is one of the big projects that we have, and having this project, we don't have any limitations to transport the goods and passengers to the Far East. And one of the main partners of our forum is Japan. And once again, we confirm that we are ready to welcome you in this project. And we have also such a mechanism as the partners between government and private companies. I would like to give you an example of the North Gates, which is at the final stage right now, and it could allow us to have the access to the north region as well, and it will change the geography of the railway transportation network. And of course, there is a challenge for us just to realize the program of the Silk Way, which we have mentioned already. And here we have some tendencies. The first one is during the last 7 years, the volumes of transit containers transportation increased to 2 times, and last year and this year we have the same growth. This is thanks to the complex of measurements, and now we can achieve this figure 1 million containers, and could do this by 2020. Of course, we need some additional investments to do this, and to have this unified logistics company is one of the tasks, and this successful project of fulfillment in this direction. However, the life gives us other challenges. The structure of goods transportation has changed. Now we have for aviation and railway in tons about 2% from the whole volume of transportations, and in money figures we have for aviation transportation. If we assess this, we receive 30%. Hooray! Now we have 70% of goods transportations, and these companies are ready to wait for 3 or 4 days. Now the electronic trade is increasing, and last year, for example, we have $2 to $3 trillion in electronic trade sites, and next year we are expecting 4 trillions. And of course, we have additional opportunities now to develop high-speed lines. What shall we propose? Maxim Stanislavovich has already mentioned we have to create the high-speed lines which could supply us under the development of this project Silk Way, and under the signed document with Chinese colleagues. And it could allow us to decrease the speed, to increase the speed, and we could receive 3 days of transportations, 10,000 kilometers with the speed of the trains up to 300 kilometers, 4-5 per day, and with the cost 30% lower comparing with the aviation transportation. This project has not only strategical and geopolitical importance, but this project also could allow us to influence to the whole transportation network between Europe and Asia, as this way could go through not only through Russia, but there is the second meaning, the passenger transportation, which could allow us to widen the borders and to receive some effects such as, giving this example, Moscow-Kazan, Cheboksar-Kazan, Novgorod, based on the calculation from our experts, and having these experts, we could receive additional benefits, some dozens of trillions, and which could give us the additional benefits for our budget, some trillions of rubles, and the effect from the Novgorodska region differs from other region. Of course, this project should have the additional mechanism, such as participation of the government on the basis of confession, and some mechanism of the future budget cost and spendings. and additional laws in the way of taxation and just to free from the tax for for property, as the volume is very great. And of course, we receive new opportunities to develop our regions. And in conclusion, I would like to tell you that this project that we have from Chelyabinsk region, from the government of Chelyabinsk region, to have high-speed line between Yekaterinburg and Chelyabinsk. And there is already memorandum in the background of SPIF, and this is also a part of the big transportation network. On one part, we could receive the Ural agglomeration with 3.5 million people in here, and it also allows us to develop the region. And on the other hand, it will be a part of the high line transportation network which unify Europe and Asia. As you see, some projects could be unified in one big project. We are developing all the time. Moscow-Kazan line has been finished, and we have received the positive resolution for having this line until Vladimir, and I think that we have all conditions to fulfill this project. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Alexander Sergeyevich. I have a small question for you. It's good to develop new conglomeration, so this is a trend, but as for the rails and as for the construction of these lines, do we need sufficient volume of these construction materials, or do we need any extra help from? Yes, this is very important and a question for us. These projects which could allow us to develop the regions, and for example, Moskva-Kazan, which is the resource plan, and we need some rails, and we need cables and metal constructions for more than 300 billion rubles. And today, this is in force. This is good for us, for our Russian infrastructure in this and industry. But still, it's important to know that we have Yevraz that could manufacture these rails, and Chelyabinsk holding as well. And we have modernization of construction industry in the way of creation of creating some metal construction in order to create some special constructions. As for example, for 100 kilometers of rails, we need a number of these constructions. Yes, we have quite a good volume for our industry, but it's important to know that we can manufacture these trains here in Russia. And to answer your future question, these trains would be of Russian manufacture. We will cooperate with our Chinese colleagues, but still here in Yekaterinburg, in Peshma, we are producing such locomotives right now. Of course, this is a challenge for our industry and for our science as well. Thank you very much. Hope that science and industry could answer this issues, and 370,000 jobs and vacancies we could receive thanks to this project. Thank you.
Now I would like компании Mitsui в России. Mitsui является нашим
4 магистральные железные дороги из востока на запад Америки. Причем Америка очень много разных автомобильных дорог. Но все равно я хочу сказать, что здесь сказали, что китайцы сейчас идут один пояс, один путь. Это тоже, я считаю, что хорошие проекты. Это будет, конечно, огромный тоже импакт и вручение российской экономики. Но в то же время подумать, что из Японское море до Балтийское море строить еще одну высокоскоростную железные дороги в России, ну, сибирские железные дороги. Но грузопоток, как сегодня господин Мишарин говорил, что очень много сейчас идет экспорт из России на восток и Японию, азиатские страны, например, угори. Но я лично считаю, угори это считается очень низкосебестоимостные товары. Вообще, в принципе, железный дорожный путь должно быть это достаточно дорого. Это не дешевый транспорт. Конечно, дешевле, чем самолет воздушный, но поэтому это, конечно, надо думать, что вести. Это тоже важно. И даже строить новые дороги, это высокоскоростные. Я все-таки считаю, что очень связано с пищевой промышленностью. Мы, Япония, уже практически открыты импорт, например, мяса, особенно свинина. 50% свинины Япония покупает из Америки и Новой Зеландии. Там есть сейчас одна проблема. Сегодняшний день покупатели считают, что все хотят очень свежие продукты, ну, включая мясо. Конечно, рыба это тоже свежая. Но когда свежие нужны, так часто пользуют воздушный путь. Но, как сегодня говорили, это очень дорогие, если использовать. Сибирские железные дороги, если Россия, например, Центральная Россия или Дальний Восток, если, например, свинья выращивать, это можно привести Японию на охлажденные способом. Мясо или рыба тоже портит качество, если это делать замороженное. У нас поэтому Япония уже такие продукты, это специальный способ на охлажденный способ. Для этого я считаю, что Россия имеет очень большой плюс, чтобы начать такой бизнес. Но это первое. Второе, я хочу сказать, что тоже Япония имеет приватизацию национальной железной дороги.
Japan is an example of privatization of national railways. I believe that, and I would like to raise this question, the Japanese had a very good experience when
приватизации железной дорожной компании Японии. Был очень большой спор почти 3 года. Но мы решили в 1987 году. Что произошло после этого? Железные дорожные тарифы практически за 30 лет практически нет повышения. Бюджет ни одной копейки не истратили для железной дорожной компании. Наоборот, железные дорожные компании зарабатывают хорошие прибыли. Наоборот, они дают налоги правительству. И мы сделали это приватизацию железной дороги не просто приватизации. Мы разделили 6 железных дорог, можно сказать, 7 железных дорожных компаний. Это опыт, я рассказывал несколько российскими правительственными лицами и спросили, что Мигро-сан, дайте тогда книгу, что, как написано. К сожалению, эта книга только написана на японском языке. Но если у вас кто-то готов перевести, это очень хороший опыт, интересный опыт, как железные дорожные компании начинают зарабатывать деньги. Один пример я скажу, что сегодняшний день JR East, это где находится в Токио, для них доход для транспорта железной дороги сегодняшний день 65%. 35% из другого дохода. В том числе, например, киоски на платформе, в том числе гостиницы, в том числе тоже здание вокзала. У нас в Японии, если вы ездили в Японию, вы можете смотреть такое высокоэтажное здание на вокзале. Вокзал – это место, где собираются людей. И там строить такой высокоэтажный дом, и там включен гостиница, универмаг, офис. За эти доходы уже сегодняшний день зарабатывают хорошие прибыли. У нас в Японии еще есть частные железные дорожные компании, которые открыли 100 лет назад. У нас было землетрясение было почти 100 лет назад. И город Токио не имел никаких денег развивать. И пригласили капиталисты. Кто-то хочет строить железные дороги, мы дадим такое право, и мы дадим тоже землю. И эти компании сегодняшний день доходы для транспорта только 13%. Но все равно они работают, как железные дорожные компании. И остальные 87% из разных способов. Даже они имеют, например, команду бейсбол. И так зарабатывают деньги. Поэтому, когда компании становятся более частные, люди сами начинают думать и зарабатывать деньги. И тогда можно уменьшить нагрузку на правительство. Поэтому это, конечно, наш опыт. Может быть, не подходит в России. Но хотелось бы, что молодые люди изучают наш опыт. Мы, японцы, готовы все рассказывать, что произошло. Это очень интересная история за последние 30 лет на японской экономике. Спасибо.
Спасибо, господин Мегура. Тут, конечно же, напрашивается вопрос к Максиму Станиславовичу и к Александру Сергеевичу. Как вы относитесь к озвученным идеям? Не знаю, как-то будем ли мы в эту дискуссию вдаваться или пойдем по плану?
Идея тут самое главное связана с тем, что, что в Японии интересного. Да? Вот эти вокзальные комплексы, их использование, тот доход, который они генерят, это недвижимость, это торговая недвижимость, и гостиницы и так далее. То есть железная дорога – это не просто рельсы и поезда, да? Это вся инфраструктура, которая вокруг них находится. И мы видим, например, даже в той же Москве создание...
For example, in Moscow, we can see similar examples whereby hubs are created, interchanges with accompanying facilities. So it is important to take into account all flaws. But what about privatizing railway lines? We do have private railway lines. Some companies do build their own lines and operate them effectively. Can I add? The Japanese experience of using interchanges and hubs is unique. We have studied it, and it is present in our plan of developing high-speed railways. There are 11 stops to Kazan from Moscow, and each city en route is a point of growth. And we could get more than 100 billion rubles from additional activities surrounding the railways, and creating a network of high-speed railway lines from the Japanese Sea to the Baltic Sea to Lisbon. This idea is attractive, and requirements as to speed are increasing, and there is a project which is called Eurasia, which is going to be implemented in the future. But I can give you one example. Today, the speed of delivery through the Trans-Siberian Railway line is 7 days, whereas from Yokohama to Vladivostok is also 10 days. And in this respect, connection through Sakhalin, and we started this project. We started considering this project from Sakhalin and on to Hokkaido. It looks quite different. And this would make Japan a non-insular country, but also freight traffic between Japan and the continent would be reduced by twice. Perhaps the Japanese colleagues should think about it, and we are now negotiating this issue with them. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to our next participants. Nikolai Merzlikov, Managing Director, Eurasian Development Bank. Eurasian Development Bank has been an active player and an active investor, financier of projects in Russia and Kazakhstan, the countries that have joined the Silk Road that was mentioned today. What is your view of this project? How is it being implemented, successfully or not? What are the challenges, and what is the collaboration like with Asian investors, and what have you got down the pipeline? Colleagues, I'm a managing director of the Eurasian Development Bank. Our bank, as a financial development institution, was set up in order to develop the infrastructure of the participating member countries, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Armenia. And of course, we're trying to follow all tendencies associated with infrastructural projects, including transport, because the conference is devoted to Russia. Then I would like to talk about Russia mostly, but I would like to emphasize that comparing Russia with other countries, we can say we're ahead of other countries, but nevertheless, there are challenges that we are trying to overcome. And what I would like to say now, in recent years, we've been having more and more projects associated with infrastructure, transport. They occupy a major part in our portfolio, and our shareholders are financing such transactions, and they would like us to invest more and more. We do have resources. And as a bank representative, I can say that we have a key problem, is that often projects are poorly elaborated. There are a lot of projects, but even a project has been discussed for a number of years, it would still be at a pre-development, pre-design stage. There are very few projects that would enable us to see immediately interests for investors and banks. Talking more specifically The main schemes that we are using are concessions and public and private partnerships. This is a very attractive financing scheme. We can see that the banks are looking at them and considering them, but we do not have that many banks that are prepared to finance such projects. This is the three big banks, I mean the Russian banks. Foreign banks that are present in Russia are involved to a lesser extent, but the development banks are looking at these projects, and we are trying to interact with such banks. The Asian Bank of Infrastructural Projects, we are considering together with it a number of investment projects in transport and infrastructure, and we are going to implement them. Despite the fact that the sanctions are creating problems with funding, nevertheless, we are trying to switch over and deal with Asian, primarily Chinese investors. Talking generally, as a bank and looking at the market of infrastructural projects, there are not that much money on the market, although the government is trying to be involved. There is some shortage of well-developed projects, well-elaborated projects that would show all the pluses and minuses for the investors. We can see what problems there are. Talking about concessions, and when talking to the regions, I can say that the public party do not always understand all the risks. They believe that concessions should be on the private side, but there should be a balance that would enable projects to be structured well, so that it would be interesting for all investors. We are looking at such projects, and we are hoping that despite the unfavorable economic indicators, this market is going to grow, perhaps not as fast as we should expect, but nevertheless it will grow. So you think there should be European companies involved in the financing of projects, but do you think there is money elsewhere, not just in Asia? We believe it is possible. It needs to be done. I think that primarily we need to talk to the banks that do not freeze their investment projects in Russia. We know that EBRD has done this, but they cannot do some of the projects, but they have frozen others. There is, of course, some underfinancing, but talking about Asian and Arabic investors, their monies are more expensive, but if one structures projects competently, then one could show more profit, more return, and such projects could be more interesting for investors who would be and there might be investors compared with the Europeans who would be interested in such projects. Okay, thank you.
So we do understand that modern transportation is not only the ground transportation, but aircrafts as well. Sergei Vladimirovich, I would like to ask you, I just looking at the topic of your report, And I would like to ask you, we have a lot of hubs and aircrafts here in regions. It is connected with the World Championship of football. And what will develop these hubs further? Are you going to make a report here? So in Vispa, I have asked Maxim Stanislavovich and the government of Russian Federation, and they allow me to stay. And dear colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to be here in Yekaterinburg and to have the same opinion as the Minister of Economy. I would like to thank the Governor of the Sverdlovsk region, Mr. Kovashev, and the former Governor, Mr. Misharin, who gave us such a regional forum, which is at the level of SPIF. And we are glad to be here, and we are very glad to have the deals that we have here in Sverdlovsk region. Thank you very much. I would like to give my opinion as a representative of Boeing, as an expert in civil aviation, about the meaning of infrastructural projects in Russia. The president has mentioned that we need the new trends for development of economy, which will be secured and protected from external influences. And I think that infrastructural projects in civil aviation are very important. This is very important not only for internal development of economy, but also for the role of Russia all around the world. Russia is the largest country in the world, and it controls the largest aviation space. If we remember about the mobility of the people, we remember that 25 years ago we have the same figures as we did at that time. Mobility of people, this is quite an important factor for development of economy. And it is connected with the fact that based on different figures, 25–30% of the working people in the whole world and in Russia, this will be a Z generation, which will risen with the mobiles and gadgets, and mobility will be a main factor for them. And this generation is going to move all the time. And of course, the infrastructure that is reconstructed right now, when we have started to fly between big cities without changes in Moscow and St. Petersburg, is very important for us. And the second factor is of importance as well. Maybe Maxim Stanislavovich will be of interest for you to hear my assessment and my opinion whether Russian-American trade relationships are of importance for our countries. Maybe we can tell that 40 billion turnover has decreased up to 30 billion. But here I have a friend of mine, Alex Radian. He's from Chamber of Commerce, and he told in the presence of Mr. Putin in St. Petersburg that we could not believe this data, as these data were given from direct contracts only. And when we talk about Apple, which is produced in China, I mean iPads and other goods which are manufactured here in China, and they are at the cost of other countries. And I'm not going to tell you that some direct delivery of Titan also influence on the delivery of other goods to Boeing, for example. But there are two components. In 2000, on the 1st of May, we have discovered the polar routes through Sibir and through Kazakhstan. And now you can fly to America and South Asia. Boeing has developed the aircraft which could fly for 18 hours. And now it was evident for us at that time that we didn't need any change in London or in Europe, and we could have direct flights. And we told at that time to Mr. Putin, he was the chairman of the government at that time, and those flights were in demand even after the 11th of September. And now, based on the calculation, we have 18,000 of flights every year, and people have already forgotten that without these direct flights, you should have the flight time 30% longer, and with changes. This is just quite a small remark that you could separate Russia. Maybe you could separate Russia from the whole world, but then for goods turnover and for passenger traffic, we have a lot of harmful things. And the second thing that I would like to mention is as follows. This quite interesting projects which are now in China and in Kiev. Not in Kiev. In India and China, I'm thinking about Ukraine all the time, and I have these relations in India and China. I have been to India not long time ago, and next 7-8 years, in the group of the middle class will be 100 million people. And they're expecting fantastic exponential growth as people are going to move all the time. And some Russian smart companies have already begun to build the networks, not between the big Chinese cities, but between small cities and Sochi, for example, as in these small cities, not so large ones, but with a population is up 5 to 10 million people who live inside. Those people will move in the future to European cities as well, and they will have the chance to see Europe through Moscow and St. Petersburg and through Sochi, and maybe in future through Sverdlovsk. If we think about those hundreds of potential tourists, we will understand the importance of aircraft infrastructure. In order to develop the mobile force inside Russia, we should suppose low costers, and thanks to our float and government, we have only one official low coster, Pobeda, and Pobeda has transported 5 million passengers, and this is one of the most scandalous company. If one deputy was not allowed to transport the bag, which with the weight above the limit, and one of the basketball player could not allow to transport his equipment. And these are only two cases for this scandalous reputation. And yesterday I met with Mr. Skuratov, who is the owner of the Ural company. They're also thinking about low costers. SS7 company also wants to have low coster company, and Chinese companies would like to have low costers as well. And if we have such companies, then we will be successful. And as it was mentioned, we have hubs for some events such as Olympians and football championships. Now we are talking about the cooperation between government and private companies. And Renova, a private company, supported Koltsova, and Koltsova was developed. And if we will tell this simple story to our rich men, then maybe they will understand that this project has some potential, and they will invest into this project. I wish that in the way of investment of aircraft and ground infrastructure, the government will tell everybody about the potential. And the second sphere which needs support is the control of the aircraft transportation. Seattle Airport has 2 landings which are of the same line, parallel line, something that resembles Sheremetyevo, but they have 75, 80 flights per hour, and Sheremetyevo could have only 40 flights. And this is in the way of flight controls. Now we have offer to the Russian government, and we are going to ask to Mr. Sokolov and Mr. Oreshkin to consider our project, which we prepared with Airport Vnukovo. This will not lead only to the sales of Boeing, but Boeings are flying all around the world, and they are in demand, and we need to solve these issues of flight controls. And it shouldn't be dependent upon the football championship. And the third task, which is very important for us, is to have the highly qualified staff. 20,000 pilots will be in demand in 10 years, and that's why we have opened the training centers in Skolkovo, which could train the pilots. Why in Skolkovo? Because in Skolkovo we are making the a great cluster, and we are going to make Hopper, and those pilots will have the opportunity to work with the special treasures, and you are invited you are one of the ministers who hasn't visited this place. And we are actively working with the universities, aircraft universities, with Ulyanovsk University and St. Petersburg University, and we are going to do our best to support them. And I would like to think you about one issue. The standard classical process of assessment of growth of civil aviation from GDP works in different way. In Russia, works differently. Usually we think if the economy works 2-3%, that we need to use 8% multiple factor. But since we have such a large territory and we have not used the whole reserve for the mobility, and we could attract more investments in cargo and passenger transportation and to develop tourists, based on my opinion, this multiple factor is much more higher. And this means that the growth for civil aviation is 22-25%, and in the whole world is only 7%. If it is so, then this is quite a big reserve to develop the economy, which Mr. Putin has mentioned. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, Vladimir Ivanov, Managing Direct Partner, Spectrum Company. Vladimir Filipovich, you represent an engineering company, and infrastructure and engineering are related notions. Do you think that in implementing infrastructural projects in Russia, we are in accordance with the current trends? Thank you very much, Oleg. I would like, in general, thank Vedomosti for invitation to attend this roundtable and speak. Our company is a sponsor. It's not my first time at INNOPROM. I can see that its importance is growing. It's a forum for exchanging opinions, globalization, growth. of independence among Russian engineers. And a lot of young people are going to come and see the achievements of Russian, but also partner countries' achievements. Japan is a third partner country of INNOPROM. What Hiroshi-san said about Japanese experience is very much close to my heart in terms of how to make money in our country. There is also a good example like this. And I mean civil aviation and airports. A lot of people coming to INNOPROM are surprised to see the airport. Despite the fact that Ekaterinburg is a big city, nevertheless it is provincial. But the airport of Koltsova was built for INNOPROM specifically, but it was set up by a private investor. At the beginning, this project didn't bring any return, but then it was followed by a period whereby the investor was learning how to manage the airport, and it brought the same amount of money as spent on it, and now it's become profitable over this period of time. The investor has spread his technologies to other 5 airports, 3 operational, and 3 being built and 2 in operational. And currently there are 4 investors like this. And when normally an airport is a gate to the city and to the region. And governors, when they would like to attract investors, and at least 3 participants would normally come, struggling to own such an asset as airport in order to become better and make money. Our company is not as big as those represented by the panelists. Actually, we've taken part in the design and construction of 5 airports, of which 2 are completely new, which are created in Russian cities with a million population, Rostov and Saratov. In Saratov, we started building the airport. Rostov, this year, it should start operating flights at the end of this year. It is not far from the city. The old airport will be integrated in the city's infrastructure. As for Rostov, it's a big event. And although it is scheduled for 2018, although their plans belong to the late Soviet period to construct an airport. After an investment project tender auction has been held, an investor would be very careful in planning. It's not only the airport outline and services, technical services are planned, but also all the surrounding facilities. Potentially, each airport can become an element of passenger traffic or freight traffic and become an expensive way of transporting, but it could become a zone of development of industrial parks, tourism, recreation. It could be a zone for the development of business parks and hotels and other elements of the infrastructure. Unfortunately, it is not always that we can do this. Privatization has happened in this country, and privatized facilities are often fragmented in terms of land users and existing facilities. Nevertheless, new airports will nevertheless become points of attraction in metropolises. In terms of investment figures, and participants. Virtually each airport project, it would involve three parties: federal authorities, air control agency, and a commercial investor who would normally deal with airports, warehouses, and, by the way, maintenance of aircraft. I understand this is a very big sphere for the next generation investments in airport holdings. And accordingly, facilities that surround the airport, and in each region the potentialities could be large. And the third participant would always be regional authorities. The problems occur at interfaces between the three players. We now have an experience of developing roadmaps, and currently we use various design methods, employing excellent digital technologies, information models, which enable the process to be designed in a transparent way for creating an asset. At the moment, we can differentiate the situation with costs and materials so that a contractor understands the logistics at the site very well, what needs to be purchased, etc., and what costs and deadlines there are. In this connection, it is also important to note that the projects that the Russian railways are implementing require private investors, professional ones. And in order this to happen as well as in Japan, we need people who can calculate money for the perspective of more than more than decades. And if a railway line is built to a specific region, it's a long-term project. And 10 rubles invested into the infrastructure wouldn't come immediately within the next 2 years. It would take dozens of years to have a return on them. And this is where business should be allowed to deal with the surrounding infrastructure of the airports before it's sold out to other investors and to other owners. And by way of concluding my brief talk, I would like to say that as of now, the Russian experiences of privatization and successful private investments into infrastructural projects is available. There are good models. The government agencies have been successful in bringing them together, and we should be careful not to scare investors away, like in Bashkiria with regard to motorways. There needs to be transparency, a good investment climate, so that nobody would be scared away. Thank you. Thank you, Vladimir Filipovich. And so we have fantastic panelists who are very, very focused. Is there anyone who would like to say something else, or are we prepared to summarize and finish our session? Maybe there are questions in the audience. Can you introduce yourself? Please wait for the microphone. I'm representing an engineering company. My name is Fokin. I would like to describe one more area in transport. Waterways. This is very good for public-private partnerships, but in connection with the seasonality. During peak seasons, it would help relieve burden from motor traffic and railway traffic. We have dealt with a number of ports from Kalach to Perm. It takes about 7 days for a ship to reach the destination. What's the question about? The question is how to attract the interest of the government and support. Perhaps not even financial. Actually, the government is paying close attention to the development of the waterways. And this year, more than 20 billion rubles have been allocated. And the situation and the throughput on our major rivers has gone down. There are problems on the Volga River. And actually, often passengers have to disembark in order to walk and be taken by motor transport until they can resume and embark again. I represent the Reverence Company. In the transport strategy of the Russian Federation until 2030, there is a liberalization. And currently, it's been delayed for 5 years. Why this strategy has been delayed, and what are the prospects for it? And the second question is, in the year 2000, Poland developed a program for a program with changes to reduce delivery dates. It's a very good system. Why hasn't it yet been realized in our country? And how could it be done? Thank you. As for traction, the long-term strategy hasn't been delayed. It is being implemented, and owing to the range of measures that have been taken over the last 5 to 7 years and formation of 2 powerful machine engineering holdings, transport machines and transport holding, we've got a whole spectrum of locomotives, both diesel locomotives and electrical locomotives for both freight traffic and passenger traffic. Every year, the Russian Railways allocates around 70 to 80 billion rubles. And we have created good competition, fair competition, and now we need to learn how to manage it all. And this has been done with world leaders on the Russian soil. And our second objective is to switch to maintenance services, to life cycle, and this is being discussed and implemented. And we have here representatives of the machine builders. As for the gauge, this is a very well-known technology. We've implemented it. And last year we launched a route from Moscow to Berlin. And so we managed to reduce to switch from one gauge to the other automatically, and so this has reduced time. And we are pursuing this challenge within the high-speed corridor project for combination the 2 gauges. Technically, we have here Siemens representatives who say that they are prepared to handle it. Talga, the Chinese companies understand that it needs to be done by a number of countries. Currently, it's a Eurasian problem that needs to be resolved. We need to forget the history of the difference between the gauges. Currently, it doesn't exist, and technically, it can be resolved. And in conclusion, I can say that since we are talking about infrastructure projects, and for a number of years I dealt with the development of infrastructure in general, and when we compare waterways, aviation, and railways and motorways, there is no competition, and so it has its own place. But in Russia, considering its distances and the transport system, there is one real disadvantage, competitive disadvantage. In Russia, we do not have accessible transport, driving at a speed of 300 or 400 kilometers per hour. Normally, it's 100 kilometers for railway, so 800 by air. And they are not comfortable for traveling to a distance of about 1,000 kilometers, and this impairs the development of agglomerations for land development. Currently, this is the problem that we are having that needs to be removed, and we do have all preconditions in order to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander Sergeyevich. I would like to thank all participants. Thank you. Your statement. I would like to make a statement. I think that we need to thank KPMG, Vedomosti, and Anfisa and Oleg for such a good plenary session. I would like to thank all participants of our plenary session. I would like to thank Maxim Stanislavovich for being patient and for listening all these issues during the plenary sessions. I know that people of your rank do not stay long at such round tables, but you stay with us the whole plenary session. I would like to thank all the guests, all participants. I wish you to have a productive, good day. Dear guests, please do not forget to transfer the simultaneous interpretation equipment to the volunteer.